Right, hello everybody. We'll give it a few more seconds to let people join in, but it's so great to see you all. I'm Atreya Mathur. I work as the Director of Legal Research at the Center for Art Law, and I am joined by Rakhel Milstein, who is the founder of Milstein Law Group and on our board of directors at the Center for Art Law. And I'm also joined by Kameé Payton, who's our Judith Bresler Fellow, and some of our summer interns as well. But thank you all for attending our showcase today on immigration resources for artists. Just as a note, that this is meant to be a short, about 40-minute session to let you know about some of the center's offerings. So we've done these showcases for our events and programs, our case law database, and you can see the recordings of these showcases on our website. And before we begin today, I will let you know a little bit more about the Center for Art Law in general and more of what we do. So the center is a Brooklyn-based research and education nonprofit, and we're dedicated to offering resources and programming to advance the arts and law community. So through our website, our newsletter, events, we disseminate information and we try to keep our audience updated on everything art law, whether it's news, cases, publications, movies, podcasts, you name it, and the center does try to cover it. Of course, this doesn't even begin to explain all that we do, so we do invite you to subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already to receive updates on our work and to see what we have planned for the rest of the year. You can also consider becoming a premium member. Our members at the center receive tons of offers and benefits. You have free access to events, access to our case law database, our articles, and very importantly, the recordings and the materials of all of our past events. So, a lot of benefits and a lot of information in the space of art law is available at the center's website. Do take a look and hopefully subscribe to everything. Just a few of what we have coming up as we begin prepping for the fall semester. We have a workshop on anti-money laundering and due diligence. We have a program on arbitration and litigation. We have a workshop on fiduciary duties, and we even have a clinic where you're paired with an attorney for a one-on-one confidential consultation session. And the clinic we have upcoming is on artist-dealer relationships, which focuses on consignments, contracts, and relationships with gallerists and art dealers. And very excitingly, we also have a 5-day art law intensive program happening in Zurich. And this is very adjacent to the Center for Art Law Summer School, which we hosted earlier this year, and the inaugural edition, which was last year. And this will be 5 days of everything art law in a different country. So if you're excited to learn and to meet other people who are interested in this field, please take a look at this on our website. Applications are open till the end of July. Just a few general housekeeping items as well. The program is being recorded for archival purposes, but we do love to see you, so feel free to put your cameras on if you would like to, but you can keep your microphones muted for the time being. The recording, as I mentioned, will be made available on the website. We will also have a short question and answer session, so if you want to put your questions in the chat box on Zoom, feel free to do that. And I think that should be all. I'm very excited to hand it over to Rakhel Milstein, who is an incredible immigration law attorney who I trust very, very much, but also she's the founder and CEO of Milstein Law Group. And as I mentioned, she's on the center's board of directors. You can read her bio in the handout, which will be shared shortly, or it might already be on the chat. Rakhel will be giving us an overview of developments in immigration, what artists should know, keep in mind, what's important, among other things. So, Raquel, I'll hand it over to you now, but thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the great introduction. It is such an honor to be part of this organization. You guys do a lot of great work. So Atreya is going to be introducing this new sort of immigration guide, but before we even go into it, I wanted to touch on some of the changes that we're all seeing in the media that's happening here in the United States with immigration, because it can affect not just the artists, but also employers, people collaborating with artists, all types of nonprofit organizations. So I'm going to share my slides and I'm going to jump right in. So give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. Arts and immigration in an unstable climate. Okay, so we're going to just touch on a few. Let me see if I can get this to go. A few different topics. Okay, first I want to just briefly just go over what kind of options are out there for immigrants who are artists or working in the arts world. I'm going to talk about some policy changes that have happened under Trump 2.0 and what it means in terms of status, timing, and travel. Then there is a part I'm going to discuss regarding employment and employers' responsibilities regarding record keeping and maintenance of files, and then how to sort of best protect yourself in this crazy, unpredictable climate where there are changes by the hour, not just by the day, and how to best protect yourself for any new developments. Okay. So here is a quick refresher for the types of basic immigration options for artists working in the United States. And this is discussed in much greater detail in this immigration guide that Atreya will share after my discussion. So we have the O1s. The O1s are probably the most common work visas in the US for artists. They're a 3-year visa. They give you flexibility. They're sort of like the golden of the visa options. There are also the P visas. These O's and P's are both temporary work visas that allow you to come for a set period of time. O1s, like I mentioned, up to 3 years. P's are up to 1 year. And so there's different types of Ps, and then spouses and children can also come as dependents. Okay, so these are basically the only options for those working in the arts generally in the United States today. We then have green cards, right? So we have an EB-1A and the EB-2 NIW, which is for the national interest waiver. Just briefly showing these because these are the two most common green card options that artists tend to pursue here in the US. They both allow you to self-sponsor. So most employment-based, which is EB, employment-based green cards, require company sponsorship. So these two don't, and they are sort of the most popular in terms of self-sponsorship. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about some of the fundamental changes that have happened and how they impact those in the US. And it also applies to those who are students, tourists, things like that. Okay, so this week we had a great development that was the end of duration of status. When a foreign national comes into the United States, when you come in through immigration at the airport or through the border at the land border, you're issued an I-94. Used to be a white piece of paper stapled to your passport. It was visible, you could see it. Today it's electronic. So anytime anybody comes into the US who's not a US citizen or permanent resident here, you always want to go online and check your I-94 because you're admitted for a period of time. So this is one big change that's happened just this week. Another topic we're going to discuss is the expanded entry and visa restrictions. There's much broader discretion for a lot of these officers, and what you're doing day to day, including social media posts and things like that, can actually directly impact the issuance of a visa at a US consulate. So broader online presence vetting is another topic. And then there's this public charge rule that was recently rescinded. It was a Biden rule that was issued in 2022. And now there's, again, more discretion for the officers. And that could put a lot of people in a tough situation if you've ever taken any kind of subsidized or government benefits from the United States. And I'll get into it. Okay, so what does the end of duration of status mean? So as I mentioned, when you enter the US as a foreign national, you're issued an I-94, which is now digital, online. You always have to check it. Now, specifically because immigration tends to make mistakes when you enter. So you may have no idea once you came into the country that he admitted you as, let's say, a tourist rather than an O1, or as a student rather than a P1. So you want to always make sure that you look at your I-94. So for students who had F1 visas or M visas, or exchange visitors who have J visas, and that can apply to students, scholars, professors, trainees, interns, there's all types of Js. Up until this rule came out, when they entered the US, you were issued an I-94 that said D/S for duration of status. So that means, look at this other document to see how long I can stay. That's been rescinded and it goes into effect on September 15th, 2026. This means that there's a definitive end date. So students have never had to deal with this in the past. there's a lot of different consequences that can arise from it in terms of maintenance of status and falling out of status, but it's a big deal, especially if you're on OPT and then have STEM OPT. And for those of you, I'm not sure if any of you are out there who have day one CPT. So it can really impact a bunch of different types of students. A lot of times people have come to the US to get a master's degree, finish that program, and then decide, you know what, I actually want to get a master's in another field. You can't do that anymore. It's one master's for an F1. So there's a lot of changes that can potentially impact you guys. So you want to look into this. Non-immigrants are also in this category that used to get duration of status. Those are people that worked for foreign media companies. So if you work for the BBC UK and you're coming here to work on their behalf, you get an I. Students are generally given a 60-day grace period at the end of their program. Now it's going to be sliced in half to 30 days. And now, because there is a definitive expiration date on your I-94, if you're a student post September 15th, the only way to stay past that date is to file with immigration, file an extension of your status. So why does this matter? It matters because the EAD is no longer automatically current, right? So you have to make sure that your I-94 and your OPT, which is your EAD, which is the one-year work permit you're issued at the end of your studies. So it's OPT stands for optional practical training. EAD is your employment authorization document. They are the same thing. They're the exact same thing. So you can have an OPT that has a different expiration date than your I-94 now. It's on you to make sure that you are following up with it. If you expire and you didn't realize it because your OPT has a later expiration date, the onus is on you to ensure that you're maintaining your status. So you really have to make sure you're paying attention to all the immigration documents you have, the I-94, the OPT, the I-20, the visa stamp. Other consequences are that you can start accruing unlawful presence after the state expires, whereas students didn't have to think about that before with duration of status. And so these are other considerations that you just want to think about in terms of filing extensions within defined windows and how this could potentially affect you if you're looking to get a second master's in the US. Okay, now here are the expanded entry and visa restrictions. Sure, we've heard about this because towards the end of 2025, this administration issued this travel ban list, right? So it prevented a lot of foreign nationals from being able to apply for a visa at a US consulate outside the US. Then, they implemented another travel ban that restricted others from applying for an immigrant visa at certain US consulates. Those are green cards. And then USCIS, which is the agency inside the United States that processes immigrant petitions or non-immigrant petitions, they also issued a pause on certain nationalities' applications. So 3 separate pauses were going on at once, okay? So there's a full or partial entry bans on certain nationals of countries, of specific countries, right? So you want to look into these lists. And in fact, on our website, if you just Google it on our website, you can see a chart that lists all the countries and what the specific restrictions are for each country because they differ. So then the pause regarding immigration in the United States, the adjustment, the USCIS agency, this was recently lifted, okay? So there was a pause on certain nationalities and those applications. It's been lifted, and actually the Immigration Service has respected the court decision and they have resumed processing of these cases. So even though an appeal may be possible, the government may always appeal the decision. Right now, it's great news for a lot of people who are stuck in the system. In fact, I had a client who on December 1st called me because he went to immigration to be sworn in for his naturalization oath ceremony, and they wouldn't let him in because they said the pause went into effect that day for Iranian nationals. So he was this close to finishing his entire US immigration journey and was paused. So now he's been naturalized. So this is great for a lot of people. These restrictions are evolving, okay? There's constant litigation. There's hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of lawsuits going on regarding these pauses and other policy issues. So you always just want to make sure you're up to date or reach out to your lawyer to ensure that you know what's going on, because like I said, the changes are happening constantly. And I can't tell you how many people go onto Claude or ChatGPT to try to find a fast answer. And I'm telling you, 95% of the time it's wrong. There's just too many nuanced changes happening too quickly. Reach out to your lawyer to get a firm answer. Don't Google it. Don't ChatGPT it or Claude it. It's too nuanced. It's just not a good idea. And okay, so practical takeaway is we want to screen nationality and travel history for any, for any case you're planning on filing. You want to look back, make sure that you are up to date with the policy changes, your own travel history. And look, some people have one citizenship, some people have 2, 3, 4, 5. You want to check to make sure that you're still eligible for some immigration benefits because of these different changes happening constantly. Okay, online presence. Well, this matters because people post things all the time on social media accounts, and you should be able to, freedom of speech, everything like that. But consulate officers have a wide amount of discretion right now in terms of issuing visas to applicants. And one of the major areas that they're really scrutinizing is social media posts. So literally anything that may be considered to be anti-US government or anything like that, it could be a major strike on your record. You want to make sure that you're not posting anything that could be, viewed as controversial in some way or another. If you're worried about being issued a US visa, you just want to have a clean record. It's not the time to make extreme comments on social media, because it really can directly impact your ability to ever come back to the US. So they go back. So when you apply for a US visa to consulate now, on the applications, you have to give them all your social media handles. Everything must be set as a public account. If you don't, they will consider that a negative factor, as though there's something to hide. So you really have to be careful. Make sure it's all public. Make sure you're smart when you're posting whatever you want to post. Don't do anything that could be potentially viewed as negative by the US government, because that really has an impact on your visa application. And you have to understand that while at immigration in the United States, at USCIS, we have an opportunity to appeal or to respond to requests, or even, sue them in federal court. When it comes to a visa application at a consulate abroad, there is this sort of broad protection amongst over these consulate officers. And so there's this doctrine of consular non-reviewability, which is very hard to break. So it's very difficult to get to appeal, or impossible to appeal a consular decision for a denial. So at times you can go back and apply again, but it's usually a pretty final decision. So you've got to be careful with your social media posts. Everything's slower. Okay. Everything is slower everywhere all the time right now. So if you have plans, you want to double that timeline. You want to make sure that you start whatever immigration case you are planning to start at least twice as long in advance. So if you're looking to go for an O1, you thought, 6 months would be enough time. No, start it a year in advance. Whatever you can do, you want to start as early as possible, because the USCIS is moving like slower than molasses. And I'm not sure if they just want everybody to file premiums so they get an extra $3,000 for each filing, but whatever the reasoning is, they're really slow. So you have to fit this in. You have to consider this when you're applying for your next immigration benefit. The visa appointments at US consulates overseas are also taking forever, because there's a new policy that says you're only allowed to apply for your visa stamp and your passport in your country of citizenship or in your country of residency. Now, for years, you could apply wherever you wanted in any country, as long as they had availability. And now today you cannot. So because of this, I mean, a lot of people who are applying for, let's say, an H-1B in India right now, there's some significant wait times. So make sure you plan that accordingly too. 221G refusals are just, they don't think you qualify. You have to come back, but you can wait. and see if they'll reverse a decision. So when you go in for a visa interview and you leave, a lot of times the status of your application will say approved, or it will say 221G. This just means they're doing an administrative processing, which includes the social media vetting, the background checks and all of that. So sometimes it looks like you have been refused or denied a visa, but it's not a denial. They need time. Sometimes this can take a week or two. Sometimes it used to take a week or two. Today, it's taking sometimes up to months for some people, depending on what they're posting on social media. And then there's also a visa bulletin, which is another log for people waiting for green cards who may have backlogs. So what can and can't be done? Okay, so like I said, the 221G administrative hold usually ends in a couple of weeks, for some people months. There's no way to expedite these processes because it's all for national security of the United States. So there's no expedited processing. You can sue in federal court by filing a writ of mandamus, but it has to be for a delay that's really unreasonable. Unreasonable is usually at least a year, most of the time 2 years. So you want to just keep this in mind because things are taking longer and they're just more difficult today than before. The public charge rule is being rescinded. This also happened this week, or the end of last week. What this means that immigration officers, both at the consulates and in the United States, are going to be looking at a full picture. They're looking at your bank account. They're looking at your income. They're looking at whether you've ever taken any benefits from the U.S. government, anything that's subsidized, whether you're healthy. They're looking at medical. So to get a green card, you have to submit a medical report. They're looking at your health to see whether or not you may be a potential burden onto the U.S. Medical systems. So they're looking at all of this. So you want to know this because, again, what it does in practice is it gives these officers way more discretion. So they have the power to decide whether or not they believe you may be a public charge to the United States, which is in essence means you may be taking benefits from the U.S. government, like food stamps, Medicare, things like that. This matters a lot because it's part of the considerations when they're adjudicating your case. So there are questions on these applications. It's not just about your extraordinary ability for an EB-1A. It's now about whether or not only are you an extraordinarily talented artist, but you're also able to financially support yourself. If this part is weak, your public charge argument, you may not get approved. So for artists, obviously most don't have a traditional 9-to-5, employment situation. So you want to make sure that you're maintaining your accounting, you're keeping all the records, and do whatever you can not to take any kind of subsidized government benefits from the U.S. This rule is taking effect on September 18th. So you can file before then. If you can file before then, it's a good idea to do so because it won't apply to your case. Although in practice, it does bleed through when it's time for the interview, but you're better off filing before it takes place if you have any concerns about these issues. Okay, next. Okay, so altogether, let's just look at this. We have shorter grace periods coming up when this F1, this duration of status rule has been rescinded. We now have fixed I-94 dates, so we have to pay attention to that, which means that in order to extend your status if you're a student, you have to proactively file an application to request an extension. Then you also have to keep in mind if you do need to travel, the consular processing delays are severe. You always want to try to make that appointment as early as you possibly can so that it'll align with whatever planned trip you have. So all of these can sort of result in potential red flags for you in the future. So keep these all in mind because if you're out of status for more than 180 days in the US, you could trigger a 3-year bar when you leave. If you're out of status for more than a year, you could trigger a 10-year bar. That means you're not coming back for 10 years. If you tour, if you are in and out of the US, you want to make sure that you're scheduling your visa appointments, so you have your visas in time. You also want to ensure when you come back in every single time, your I-94 is accurate. And if it's not, you can easily correct it, but you have to proactively do it. And again, the onus is on you. Any mistakes immigration makes based on your applications is your fault. So you have to be on top of it. So yeah, missed extension is also your problem. Now, I have a section for employers. I'm not going to go too deep into this because I believe most of you are not the employers and mostly the artists, but there's also a heightened, there's been an increase of site visits to different types of organizations and employers. So immigration's coming, ICE coming to see whether or not you're maintaining your files, and there are specific requirements for employers to maintain their personnel files and audit files for different types of foreign employees. So if you are an employer and this is of concern to you, definitely reach out to me, but I just don't think most of you are. So I'm going to sort of go lightly over this section. Okay. I will say that one of the things I've seen in the context of an O1 is we had a client who is a visual artist, and he was working for a gallery, and back in February, immigration called the gallery to find out if just to verify the employment. So there is an increase in their fraud unit to reach out to different employers to ensure that whatever documents contained in the O1 petition regarding employment, future employment, potential future employment was actually taking place, and that they authorized that to make sure that these documents weren't doctored in any way. So it does come up for everybody. These are the retention rules for some of the employers, just so you can see it. But again, I'm not going to go too deep into it because I just don't think it really is super relevant for you guys today. Looking forward, how do you prepare for the best? How do you put yourself in the best position so that you're not at risk, right? Again, try to file as early as you possibly can. You can apply for an O1 up to a year before the requested start date. If you know you're going for an O1 2 years in advance, there's no reason to wait 3 months before your status expires to reach out to a lawyer. It makes no sense. Reach out as early as you possibly can. The minute you think about possibly pursuing an O or a P or an EB1, reach out to a lawyer so that you can ensure that you have the best timeline set up. Yeah, audits are happening. Well, audits are happening, but also we're auditing your presence and disclosure obligations, right? So you want to make sure that any time you've spent in the U.S. is authorized. Check your I-94s, but then also make sure that anything relating to social media, anything like that, is clean before you go for your interviews. Employers need to make sure that you're checking nationality and any restrictions, because a lot of times there are offers going out from employers to employees who can't come to the U.S. to take that job because of these travel restrictions. The public charge rule, again, make sure that you're keeping track of your finances and do not take any government benefits. If you can avoid it by all costs, you should. If you're ever like, I want to travel just for fun, it's not the time. I mean, there's just a heightened risk of issues. It's not as though you can't travel, but if it's not absolutely necessary, you're always better off sort of staying put in this administration, simply because there's a lot of inexperienced officers at the border who don't always know what they're doing, and their decisions can have some significant and serious outcomes for you. And yes, you have to use premium processing no matter what, because they're not processing any cases without it, it seems like right now. And that is basically all of it. I'm going to shift it over to Atreya, who will then take you into this beautiful immigration handout.
Thank you so much, Raquel. These developments and updates and executive orders are so important to be aware of, even though sometimes it can be very stressful to listen to and keep in the loop of. It is so important. So thank you once again for sharing.
Oh, you're welcome. And
That.
I want to just say at the end, I forgot to mention, like, I want you to know what the risks are, but the time, the climate, immigration is still moving forward these days. It's still ultimately positive. It's just a bumpier road to get to the final result. So things still remain positive, even though there are these additional developments.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Raquel. We appreciate it. And I think now we'll spend the next part of this program on introducing one of the resources that the center has been working on for a little while, and something that is particularly very meaningful to me as well. It's our immigration guide for artists. And a big thank you to Rakhel, to Kameé, Irina Tarsis, who helped guide this project, and to our summer interns for their work on it as well. And we're very proud that it's available on the website through the links that were shared in the chat. But this guide, it is designed to be just a practical, accessible starting point for artists, for creatives, for anybody international when you're trying to understand what the US immigration system is, and maybe even more importantly, trying to figure out where you might fit into it. And I do want to say that I am speaking about this resource not only as somebody who works at the center, but somebody who is also navigating the immigration system and continues to, and from an F1 to an OPT to a cap exempt H1B and a renewal and so forth. I know firsthand how overwhelming that process can feel. And there are just so many visa categories, there's so much documentation, there are costs and fees. And as Raquel was mentioning, there are constantly headlines, especially now, about immigration policy, executive orders, changes to H1Bs, and new programs. And of course, as you can tell, there are lots of abbreviations and tons of acronyms that are used everywhere. And when you're trying to build your career at the same time, it can be a little difficult to understand out of all of this which information actually applies to you. Just as an example, the term sponsor. If you ask an employer who doesn't typically work with international employees or with international artists for visa sponsorship, sometimes just the term sponsor can trigger a bit of a dramatic response saying, we can't sponsor you, we don't have the money to do that, that's too much. And it's often without knowing what sponsorship entails and what it actually means. And it is difficult, of course, to then ask somebody or an entity to be your sponsor when you yourself may not fully understand what that means. And if you get stressed and if you are uncertain or unsure, then the sponsor or the employer that you're working with, they could also be more stressed and unsure knowing what they might have to do for your application. At different points through the process, I had found myself asking, what are my options? What should I be prepping for? Where do I begin? When do I start? How much time would be needed? And what happens if one particular route that I had been working towards doesn't work out? Is there a backup option? What is the next step? And if I want to stay in the longer term, could that be a possibility? If I'm on a current visa, is it possible to switch to another one during my stay here? Or what about a green card? These are just some questions that I've always had in mind when I was working through. And the answer for a lot of this has been research and preparation, apart from, of course, working with a very good immigration attorney. And that is essentially the reason behind the guide that you're seeing. The immigration process, as you can hear, it can be a little intimidating at times, but understanding what the process is, I think it gives you some agency and some sort of control. A good chunk of the time, not just for immigration, but of course for life, you may not have control over how your situation is going to play out. But just at the start, I think you do have some control. Ultimately, of course, you need an immigration attorney. You'll need professional legal advice. But I think the best thing that you can do for yourself is to understand the landscape before you really make a decision, and you are going to be the best advocate for yourself. And with all of this information that you're able to gather, you can work productively with an attorney to plan your next steps. So I'm very excited to introduce this guide, which we have worked on and we think would be helpful for exactly this purpose. And I thought I would guide you through some of the different portions of the guide to understand what it is, where the information is located, and just how to navigate it. But first and foremost, of course, we want to mention that this is an educational guide and it is not legal advice. It's just a starting point and it doesn't create any attorney-client relationship of the sort, and it is only informational. So you do have to speak with an immigration attorney for your very particular circumstances. But the guide, as we have mentioned, it is available through the center's website. It's part of our special resources for artists and professionals. And if you go to the center's main page, under our top resources, it's going to be listed once you scroll down. And the goal is to make this resource accessible, but also something that you can keep returning to. And it's not something that you have to read immediately from beginning to end. But since this law and the options can be a little complex and your goals and circumstances, they can change over time. So we hope that you look at this resource as something that you can use at different points of your career. You can go back to it if something changes on how you want to approach things and what plan you want to keep in mind. Now, you'll be able to see the table of contents here, and you'll be able to see a nice page on how you're going to use this guide. It just provides an overview of the different visas and pathways that could be relevant to artists, but pretty much anybody who is international. And we're hoping that you understand the basic landscape, what visa types are available, who they might be relevant to, what are the requirements and eligibility criteria, and what you should be thinking about. It's also designed in a way to hopefully help you ask better questions to yourself. A lot of times, at least when I was working through this, the first question isn't always, oh, which visa should I apply for? Sometimes you have to think, what is the career or the life that you want in the US? And what can you do now at this stage to at least build it and qualify for it? And there are tons of questions that you need to be thinking about. Do you already have an employer? Are you hoping to work independently? Are you a student and you're thinking about, oh, what am I going to do after graduation? Or are you an artist and you have a national and international reputation? Are you looking for something temporary to showcase your work and then go back? Or are you thinking about something more longer term? These are all questions that hopefully the guide will direct you through. And these are the questions you should keep in mind once you read the introduction and how to use this guide when you're looking at the visa options. My recommendation for using this guide is, of course, to begin with the introduction, read the how to use the guide, and understand why it's important to know the visa categories. And that will give you the questions that I was just mentioning earlier as you approach the guide. Once you do that, there are various pages with good direction to tell you what to navigate to next. If you go to the quick summary of options, that's going to give you a quick overview of non-immigrant visas, like an O1, the H1B, or you have immigrant visas or green cards. And this way, you'll know which broader category you're looking for, what might suit your needs better, based on all of those questions that you answered in your mind. And if there are abbreviations that we mention or certain terms like sponsor or petitioner or beneficiary that you may not be aware of, or what the difference between consular notification is, or what a visa stamp actually means. All of this has also been defined in the key immigration terms. So you will be able to go through that, and you can always go back to this list of terms if there's something that you're not too sure of. Now, once you go through the quick summary of options and you have a sense of what you're looking for, then is the time to focus your time. And if you've identified maybe one or two or a couple of different visas or pathways that would be helpful for you, then you can go deeper into them. You can look at the table of contents and you can select which visa you want to focus on. And if you're deciding between a few, there's also a comparison table between non-immigrant and immigrant visas. So you have a little wider and bird's eye perspective of what exactly might be most helpful to you. And finally, once you have been able to focus your time and you select which visa could be the most beneficial to you, then you can scroll directly to that and you can see what they are, what they mean, how long the visa is for, are you eligible, and if you have the time and you're not qualifying right now, what would you need in order to make your application stronger? So you can work through those as you go through the guide and you focus on the individual visa sections. There is also a page on strategic considerations. And once again, as I was mentioning, when I was going through a lot of this process, it isn't just, hey, am I able to get this visa right now? Am I able to qualify for it? But it's whether if I'm on a current visa, what I can do while I'm on another visa to put myself in a stronger position and apply for something else or a green card later. And I think understanding the documentation that is needed and how early you may have to start tracking things is very, very important. And this could mean your professional achievements, your exhibitions, awards, any speaking engagements you've done. You definitely should have a good idea and know what documentation you should be keeping in order to share with your attorney and to make sure that you have all of this in a kind of organized way. I use different folders on my computer or Google Drive just to make sure you're able to track certain things that you have. So these strategic considerations give you a little bit more guidance on how to work through these, what your goals might be, and how to track a lot of the documentation that you might have to keep. And I also just want to quickly mention that at the end of the guide, there are also different additional resources. Rakhel has a wonderful website where they post a lot of updates and memos. So that's been a great resource for me. And I always go there and check on different things. It is important to keep in touch with what is happening right now with the current administration and the executive orders, just so you're planning ahead. But if I could leave you with one thought when you're using this guide, it's the immigration world right now is very complex, but you can't let the complexity or even how unknown or uncertain it is stop you from thinking about what your next steps are going to be and beginning to work on a visa as well. So regardless of all of this and what you're hearing, make sure that you're planning early, and we hope that this guide will be that starting point, and we have made it nice and bright and colorful just so that you don't find it too dry and boring and that you engage with it and you think about the questions that we've mentioned through the showcase. So we hope that this will be helpful and that you'll be able to understand your options better, and you might be in a better position to once again have a more informed and productive discussion with an attorney when the time comes. And for all of this, we also have our immigration clinic, which I'll let Kameé mention now. But do let us know your thoughts if you start going through the guide. We're also open to feedback and suggestions and what might make it more helpful and more accessible for anybody, whether it's artists or whether it is students. So do reach out to us. And Kameé, I will hand it over to you now.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, Raquel and Atreya, for all the really helpful information and for your hard work on the guide. I think this is a really incredible resource that we get to provide for artists. So, as Atreya mentioned, my name is Kameé Payton, and I'm the Judith Bresler Fellow here at the center. And as the fellow, I coordinate the center's visual artists legal clinics. The clinics were launched in 2020 as a way to make art law accessible to artists. And we host our clinics online so that people can attend from all over the states as well as across the globe. What these look like, they consist of a keynote presentation, which is a 30-minute primer on an art law topic, which gives participants practical and implementable information. And then following the keynote, the participants are paired with one of our volunteer attorneys for a pro bono one-on-one consultation. So the consultations are meant to give artists a chance to ask their questions to an expert in the field and to be given an idea of best next steps. We currently have 4 legal clinics that we offer, and I just briefly want to give you a quick overview of each. So we have the Legacy and Estate Clinic, and in this clinic we provide information on planning for an artist's legacy. We discuss various estate planning strategies, which documents to begin gathering, and who to get in touch with, and at what different stages of estate planning you should get in touch with these professionals. The next is our artist-dealer relationships clinic, and this one focuses on the main contracts between artist and dealer, such as consignment agreements. And in this clinic, we also discuss the fiduciary duties within a consignment relationship. The copyright clinic is the next one, which discusses how to protect your intellectual property rights, how to exercise your rights, and we go over topics on copyright, moral rights, licensing, and more. And then last but not least, of course, is our immigration clinic, which is meant to assist artists in understanding the visa options which are available to you and the process, the cost, and strategic decisions to consider while working to obtain a visa. So again, these clinics are a great resource because in attending, you receive foundational instruction and information on these topics. You receive a handout, much like the one that we sent out today, that gives you additional readings and resources. And then you do get that one-on-one consultation with an attorney where you can have your specific questions answered and be directed to further help and guidance. So these are a great starting place for understanding the legal issues which affect your practice every day as an artist. And we host several clinical sessions each year, so you can find information about the clinics, the dates, and how to register on our website, as well as on our social media channels. And one last thing I'll mention is that in addition, we have workshops which coincide with each of these topics. And the workshops are a 1 hour long lecture that go more in depth on specific topics. For instance, when we had our copyright clinic, then we had our copyright workshop in the fall, which was all about licensing. Or for legacy and estate clinic, we had a workshop on charitable giving and strategic lifetime giving. So the workshops are an additional resource where you can dive a little bit deeper on these subjects and get more information that you can apply to your practice as well. And then one last thing, a reminder that our events and our memberships are discounted for artists and students. So that's also a great benefit that the center offers too. So again, we hope these resources are really helpful to you. We hope to see you at our clinics and take advantage of those and definitely sign up. We should have an immigration clinic coming up in the fall, and we have our artist dealer relationship clinic in September.
Thank you. We don't see any questions in the chat yet, but if you do have any, please feel free to reach out to us. You have our email, and we'll be happy to answer any additional questions. We hope you use the resources that we've mentioned. We hope you take a look at the guide, and we'll be sending the guide once again along with a recording of this showcase so you know how best to use it and what the latest developments in immigration are. So we hope that you keep in touch and let us know your thoughts. Yes, thank you. And thank you once again, Rakhel and Kameé. I really appreciate all your work and for joining this showcase for our audience.
Pleasure, pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll put the links to some of the emails in the chat. You can reach out to clinic@itsartlaw.org and we'll be able to send in more information. And it is very important to work with a good immigration attorney. I've had different experiences. I'm working with an incredible one now. But we do have a list of immigration attorneys who have volunteered at our clinics. And in case anybody is looking for recommendations, we'd be happy to share some of the ones we have worked with and how to get in touch with them. All right. I don't think there are any other questions. Thank you once again, Rakhel. I think we will end for the day, but we'll receive a recording of this and share that with you too.
Good. Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay.